Welcome to the Enchanted Earth podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own. Well, welcome. Today I have with us Cathi Hargaden, and let me tell you a little bit about Cathi. She's an internationally acclaimed expert in the ancient art of Feng Shui, with over 20 years of experience in consulting and teaching. Having worked with over 11,000 homes and offices globally, Cathi has helped clients increase revenue, reduce stress, resolve conflicts, build health, and more. As the host of Feng Shui Mastery Show podcast, her expertise spans health, wealth, business, personal development, and spiritual growth. Cathi's message focuses on the importance of modulating the energy and frequency of spaces to ensure health, good fortune, and overall well-being. So welcome, Cathi. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Maureen, for inviting me.
Oh, yeah, it was, we're both members of the International Feng Shui Guild, and you invited me to come on your show to talk about kind of my blend of Feng Shui, which I really don't talk about Feng Shui in this podcast. It's really funny. But I am so excited to have you on today because we started talking about nature experiences. And one thing I find is a lot of people don't realize the importance of nature in Feng Shui, especially in our modern times. I think a lot of people associate it with kind of placement of furniture and hanging different things around their home. But really, it's about our connection with the land and how primal is that.
Yes, it's a very good point. And we don't realize, if we look across the world, just how many people have been, shall we say, political feng shuied into inner cities where they don't have any access to nature at all. So this has a huge impact, therefore, on their own perception of life and their own quality of life as well.
Yeah, and that gets to your experience as a child. I love to hear different perspectives from people. I found that a lot of the people that I interviewed for my book, The Enchanted Earth, had childhoods steeped in rural landscapes. Or, they lived in a city and they spent the whole summer by the seashore or camping or, at a farm. And, but there's some people that haven't had that experience at all. So I would love to hear about where you're from and what your connection with nature was like as a child.
Well, thank you for inviting me to discuss this. I was brought up in inner city Liverpool. Yes, home of the Beatles, home of the big Liverpool football or soccer club. And that was the background, that was the wallpaper of our lives, really. It was the music and the football. And I came from an Irish background. So the presence of trees, for example, and nature were absent. And the only redeeming feature was that my own mother had a small garden in front of the house. And this garden was like Eden. It was the beautiful garden. Everyone would stop and smell the roses and they would look. And it was something so proud for the whole family because my sister and myself used to help her water the flowers every night. And she was a natural, all different kinds of flowers. I can see it now. And this was the only connection with nature. Although from the age of 7 upwards, every year we were taken to Ireland. We went back to just south of Dublin. And it was the green. And we were there for a month. We weren't there for a few days. We were there for a whole month. And by the sea. And we did love it. we just loved it, and we loved the green and everything, about the culture. But I noticed that when it was time to return, I didn't want to come back. And when we got off the boat, we didn't live too far from the dockland. You could feel the barbed wire, the metallic, the brick, the concrete, and I could feel my own heart just kind of go down a bit because it affected me. It really did affect me that there was nothing. Now, don't get me wrong, there were parks, there were public parks, and the whole street, we used to go as a gang, and in the summer we would go to the park. So that was our saving grace, was the beautiful parks. But there was no trees in the street, there was nothing like that, which I really did notice. And I went to school just around the corner, and that was also, no nature at all. And every year at Christmas, my mum would invest in a most beautiful Christmas tree, and it was always real. Everybody else had fake Christmas trees, but we prided ourselves on this tree, and it wasn't a small one. It took up the whole bay window. So you were asking about the childhood experience. This is where it came for me. This is really very strong. So it was very special. It didn't matter where it came from, but I think they were Norwegian. But we would put up the tree, and there was a certain way we decorate it with my mum's help. And then everyone left the Christmas tree, and they were just in the rest of the house. But I stayed with the tree, and I don't know where this came from. I do come from a Catholic background, but I mean, I'm only realising this more in the last year. But I would then create a little ritual of a ceremony, a parade around the room, and I would sing hymns, and it was singing hymns to the tree. And I would pay homage to the tree, and then I would go right up to the tree, and I could feel, I mean, we're talking 6 years of age, 7, 8, 9, 10, right up, always right up to the nth. And I'd go right up to the tree, and I'd try and hug it. But remember, it's got pines. But the smell, the aroma, it was living. It was alive. I felt alive, and I used to kind of give it a big hug. No one saw me. Yeah, this was between me and the tree. And I'd feel like I was a part of the tree, and it was real. It was when I say real, it was communicating with me, and I felt. And then when it was time to take it down, I'd always cry. The tree it had lost all its pines because of the heat, so out it went, and it was all such a loss for me. And so they're my early years, and we continued to go to Ireland every year, right up to the age of 18. But between, in the UK, you go to what's called a junior school at the age of 11. So and rather than go out to the suburbs, I was going into the inner city school. And it was very clear by the 5 years that I had spent there that we weren't destined for greater things. That was not the agenda. But in the school, and on the way to the school, there was not one tree. Right? So when I got to the school, it was all brick. They were building a big hospital, and it was all barbed wire. It was all barbed wire in the surrounding of the school. And that impeded upon me. I felt a low energy. I didn't like being in the inner city. And there was, on the journey on the bus, there was one place where they were taking down all the old houses and they were building new ones. But they left one tree on the landscape. There was one tree. So they'd got rid of everything else but this one tree. And I really felt like there was a communication between me and the tree. And then what happened at 16, 5 of us were taken to the suburbs, out to a convent school. And my goodness, what a difference in environment. What a difference. Surrounded by trees, pink apple blossom trees, fields and fields. And I was saying to the girls I met there, I said, I said, do you not realise how lucky you are? They didn't. They didn't get it. They took it all for granted. So what can be deemed a disadvantage actually provided me with such a contrast that my appreciation of the trees and nature was vast, far more vast than anybody who had been accustomed to it. And one day, one of the PE teachers said to me, because I was running, and those days nobody ran. And I was running in the field, and she stopped me. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm running." And I remember thinking, I'm taking advantage. There's a field to run in. Whereas all the other girls were back in the school talking about diets. I didn't have time for that. I thought, this is boring. And I didn't need to run because I was so skinny, but I just wanted to run free.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know if all that kind of talks to your, it is an enchanted world. And I think it starts with being such a young child, being aware and open to that.
Yeah, there's so many things that were flooding in as you were talking. And I was kind of correlating it to my childhood with our Christmas tree. I was the youngest in a family of, I have 2 other siblings. But I remember laying there on our couch on my stomach after we put the tree up at night, like every night. And we would have the lights on it, and everyone else would be in the den watching TV. And I would just sit there and I would just look at this tree and look. And, I don't know what was going through my head except that I was just like embracing this amazing energy, I think, from this tree. And I haven't really thought about it until you brought that story up. So I'm going to have to really think about that. But it was a magical connection.
Yeah, definitely.
I just wanted to ask you about going to Ireland for that month. Was that every summer or most summers?
Yes.
Yeah. So, wow. So not only a difference in the landscape, but the culture.
Yeah.
Did you at all connect with that notion of the landscape being alive and nature spirit being real when you were there?
Well, we were predominantly by the seaside, and we didn't have a car. I mean, we're talking about the 60s. But we did take the buses out to places like Glendalough, which is known as the Lake District of Ireland. It's all wooded forest, and we go there, and that was beautiful. So it's still it's a deeper green in Ireland, maybe more magical because it's Ireland. It's got that magic leprechaun fairy feel. I mean, I don't want to kind of play into the profile of Ireland in that way necessarily, but my father was Irish, and there was that about him, the eclectic, the mystery, and the history. And so when we got to go to the beautiful Powers Court Gardens in Enniskerry, and in Glendalough, another place called Blessington Lake, stunning, beautiful places. Beyond that, I do think that the landscape changes. I have been down to Cork and Kerry and Galway. It's a lot more wild and rugged, I would say. But I don't know, because of the strong cultural influences growing up, that I felt more of a heart connection to Ireland and anything associated with that. So, for example, when I bought a house in Nova Scotia, and I got in a car and I went north, and then I discovered all these places with the same names as where I went to in Ireland, where I kind of, it's like a second home. And I thought, why have they got, well, whoever were the settlers, they would have been Irish, and they brought those names over with them. But the locals, when I spoke to them, they didn't realise that. They didn't know that the names like Sugarloaf Mountain came from Sugarloaf Mountain just south of Ireland. Yes, it's a perception as well. We create a landscape within us, often based on our upbringing, and that does involve nature or the lack of it. And but I definitely think being around nature changes one's perception of the world and perspective, and creates a unique, esoteric, invisible connection with that which is not human. Yeah.
It just makes sense that our environment, be it man-made or natural, influences us in a big way. It has such an impact, and that's what Feng Shui is about. That is about recognizing our connection with our environments, be it positive or negative, but it's influencing us. And the metaphor and the symbolism that we see on the outside is a reflection on the inside, and vice versa. I mean, yes, seeing all that metal and barbed wire, and it can't help to have an impact on the people that live there. But like you were more aware than most of that. You were sensitive to the environment, where a lot of people, it's amazing, still see no connection between the environment and what's going on inside them. And we see this in a big planetary way, because the degradation of the planet is just showing the degradation of our spiritual inner soul.
Well, we've chosen it's special that we're talking about this, but before I came online, I was very, what shall I say, disappointed, upset, because the one redeeming feature of the environment that I was brought up in was a library on the corner of our street. I have just been given news that during the recent riots, they've set a fire to it. So can you see that when you destroy it's a library. That library, I spent my upbringing in it because it offered shelter. It was a neutral place where you could go if there was arguments in the house or there was upset. You could go there and you could hide behind the books. I did my homework there. When my main focus was to get the hell out of there, because it was not the scenery that I wanted for me as a child, or as I started to grow up. I wanted faraway places. I've travelled extensively and know how they make me feel. That kind of scarcity, or the lack of something in it, creates a wanting in oneself to make it better, which is what my mum was doing. Beautiful, stunning garden. The aromas and, people would get jealous. A lot of people were really, they said, we love stopping here. But the library was the fountain. It was a place that took us out. Now, I know there's no trees but the trees were in the books.
Oh, yeah.
It's made of paper.
Yeah.
I mean, without the paper, we have no books. And the books opened up knowledge of trees, of nature. It opened up such another world. We used to have poetry evenings there. And of course, as kids, we used to kind of prank around. But it opened up another world and I felt secure there as well.
Yeah.
That's why I love libraries. I really do. I feel at home. And then when people spoil their own environment, I can understand the anger. I can. But, I mean, they didn't choose a pub where people destroyed themselves. They chose the fount of knowledge. So, getting back to the whole thing about when you don't give environments that are worth or of great value to people, they will continue to denigrate it. And that's why we talk about the balance of, when there's no trees in sight, there's no message coming back that we all grow and we have many branches associated to ourselves as people. Yeah. It's this is why people implode. And that's why it did, your wealth is in your wounds. So the wounds from such environments. But it was that inspired me to go to other places and see how they live. And, and you've got other places where, like Dubai, where there are palm trees there, but there is an imbalance. So you've got too much concrete, too much glass, and that has an effect upon the heart. I kind of like the culture, but I couldn't live there. I've been to Kerala a lot in South India. Well, they're having massive floods now, which is kind of normal, but not as big as it. And it's because they're all chopping the trees down. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not blaming one country because it is almost an infection of humanity. But I'm very fortunate I'm in front of a forest now. But I've been all over and I've seen some beautiful settings where, like Tasmania, Tasmania, that's a pearl, that's a hidden pearl in Australia. Not many Australians have been there, and that's full of greenery. It's very like when I went 3 steps off the plane, I felt I was in an island.
Oh. So just to let everybody know, you're living in Yorkshire now. That's the north of England, right?
It is, yes. It's famous for its beautiful scenery. It's got the Yorkshire Dales and the national forests. And I'm on the outskirts of a city, but it doesn't, 2 minutes in the car and you're into farms and, like there's a lot of hurly-burly going on in the country at the moment. And I drove past all the cows just sitting there and I thought, I'm going to be a cow. I'm just going to sit there and just like, oh, well, whatever.
Staying grounded, right?
Yes,
as they
grounded.
do, centered, just able to take things as it comes and just know it will pass.
Yeah.
That is such a valuable lesson for us all.
Isn't it?
So everything you shared is profoundly moving. Do you have a particular experience you would like to share?
Yes. As I said, I've been in lots of environments, many, where there's forests and trees. The experience I had with the Christmas tree as a child, that came back to me in 1990. So it's
Internet.
Computers, really.
Yeah.
And all that. And I was working in a radio station. I won a research award, and it was to look at community radio stations in various communities and see how it's served a purpose for that particular community. So, to be quite honest, I didn't really have a clue what I was going to be doing. But my main thing was I wanted to go to Canada. And so I went to this station in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, radio station. And I went in there and I said, this is what I'm doing. And they were not interested at all. And they just threw a card at me. I said, yeah, I'll go to these people. So I didn't really understand the demographics at all of Canada. So I phoned these people, and they're called Northern Native Broadcasting. But I didn't really have a handle truly on the First Nation at all. But they sounded friendly. And they said, yeah, come on up. I said, how do I get up there? I was on a coach. And the Walkman had just come out. So I had this Walkman in my ear. And I was listening to music and I was watching the beautiful scenery. So I was on there. This is how I remember it. So I was on there, and then for no reason, I looked back. And I looked back and it was all trees. And within a slip of a second, I don't remember the music or anything. It was an experience never to be forgotten. Within a split second, I was the tree and the tree was me. It's been explained to me since then that there's no space. All the space between objects and people were collapsed. And I've since understood this to be a samadhi. Samadhi is when you, as a being, collapse into one other object. Whereas enlightenment is not that I have that state of consciousness. Enlightenment is when you know you are everything. And I can't imagine to be that little bit of experience that I had, to be one with everything. But here I was, one with the tree. And it lasted for a split second, but it never left me. I knew I'm not separate. I'm not separate. Nothing's separate. So wherever came into my frequency at that time, I don't know. It wasn't like I was saying 3 Hail Marys. It wasn't like I was saying hello to Buddha or Krishna. I could never have forecasted it. I was in a place, the only thing that I could say was that on this journey, I knew that my mum was dying at home. And this was on the back of, so the whole concept of mortality and death was within me. And I was making this journey. I was running away. And to be quite honest, I didn't want to lose the research fund. There was plenty of people. I had been doing the bulk of the caring anyway. And then to end up within the First Nation a bit later on, it all felt that it was coming together. And then the tree kind of connecting with me. It was almost like a message for, I'm only saying this now, I didn't say it then, but it was almost like a message that no one goes anywhere. We are all in this together. And it's an illusion of separation. I also had another experience with trees. I felt like it was supporting me, but it wasn't as clear as this one I'm talking about on Vancouver Island. It was very, it's never left me, because I'm talking about it. It never left me. It was like part of that whole experience as well as a child with the Christmas tree, because you've got Christmas trees in Canada. Everything's a Christmas tree for me, because we just had one tree, yeah. And so I really felt with them. And my consciousness is saying, I know I had that experience. It's in me. It's like but it's almost part of my identity, because I am it.
Right.
I am it. And it's only because I have meditated subsequently from 1994 onwards that I realised I can interpret it before. But I knew I'd never experienced anything like it in my life, and never since, actually.
So this was kind of early on before you really got onto your spiritual path, would you say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I had another one as well, but it wasn't
So,
to do with nature. I was walking down my street where the library was, and I was 7 years of age. Something, it's not like a voice. You get put into a space, and it's not a space that you put yourself into. And it was next door to the library that they've just been burning, by the way.
that is really very interesting because the library just came up in this conversation and now you're bringing this up. There's a very strong connection with you in that library and that opening.
I only found out 5 minutes before I came on to broadcast with you. So it's around me.
Yes, yes.
And I didn't want to kind of talk about it. I thought, I don't want to ruin a podcast. But it's come up, and it's to do with the paper and the books.
Yeah.
And the knowledge.
And then the wisdom. The wisdom.
Yeah, the wisdom. Yeah, and the tree.
The trees, yeah.
Tree of knowledge.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So this experience when you were 7, can you describe it a little bit?
It's really hard because I wouldn't go to school dinners, so I was the only kid out at lunchtime. And I used to do all the shopping for the little old ladies in the street. So I was on my way, and I was just down the road, past the library was there, and it wasn't a voice, so I looked up. Now, something I did see was a yacht. It was just a shape of a boat. Part of me feels that something to do with water, maybe my demise. I felt that at 7. It wasn't like, oh, that's a bad message for me or a bad omen. But it took me out of the frequency that I found myself in. And that would never have happened if I had been in the playground. I mean, defying the authority, which is what I've done all along. Like, I didn't want to stay for school dinners. I had eating problems anyway. So it took me into different environments I wouldn't normally be in. But I found myself on my own. I'm taking responsibility. But I was having these, a child, like at 7, I was like, it lifted me out of something, and it was a message that there was something higher. There was something, and it nothing to do with a God it was an energy. It was an experience. It wasn't something that I was frightened about, but it was different, and it was of a out of this world phenomenon.
Yeah.
If I had to interpret it now, it was showing me something other than what we normally see or feel. There's something beyond the street, which is what I wanted, And this is the tale of lots of people right across the world. They want to escape often their environments because they want something else. They long for something beyond the repeat patterns sometimes. And I felt I didn't calibrate with the culture in which I grew up in. I didn't, and it could be to do with the Irishness, but even in the Irish thing, I didn't feel like I calibrated there neither. So, it's probably the reason why I've been nomadic, and I go into different places and cultures and I feel affinity with other things, perhaps. And it's not that I'm lost, it's that I'm open. And it's because I was open that I think these energies have had a space in which to resonate with. I've never said that before. But I think I was not signed up to any club, so to speak. I was open. And this boat, I don't know if it meant I wanted to go on a journey. I mean, sometimes I think I've interpreted it, you can edit this one out if you want, but maybe that's how I'm going to end my life.
Oh,
you know, on a boat somewhere, on a yacht. I don't know. I don't know why it would be like that,
yeah.
you know. But that was the 7-year-old's interpretation of like, I think I would have perceived it or understood it as that because this was showing me that maybe there's a beginning and a middle and an end to everything, but also it was a feeling of eternity. Yeah, that was the feeling. A feeling of eternity. And it was big. Too big for where I was in the street.
Yeah.
And the same for the tree. It was, and you know, your mind can't take you there. Your mind can't say, right, no. It's never going to do that. The mind can't. But if you understand frequency and let go, then something may happen. But you can't will something like that. I've tried to do it before.
I know. When we
come into me.
Yeah, when we have these experiences, it's we want more, right? And I know in my travel to Scotland last year, which is I'm Irish and Scottish,
Okay.
and I had been wanting to go to Scotland my whole life, and here I am in the land of my ancestors, and there's my maiden name, you know, up on memorials, and it's Matheson, which is a very small clan, but I was at this part of the Highlands where they lived. So my whole life, I was expecting to have this like magical experience, and it was beautiful, loved it, but nothing was happening in that magical way.
Yeah.
And then it just snuck up on me when I was at the Isle of Skye at this one spot. And I just burst out crying. It was such an experience of connection, and I belonged to this land. I like, perhaps similar to that tree that it was just, you were one. It was really incredible. But it's so true. We can't expect it. We can't control it. We can't will it to happen. We just have to be open.
And not look for it. And isn't that true of everything in life? Really think about it. I was thinking about love as I was talking about that. And I thought, when you try and find it, or, you know, but when you're not looking, you know, it sneaks up on you. This other experience I had, I was living in Windsor. It was the Windsor Great Park. It's beautiful. The trees are beautiful. I think they're about 300 years old. And one day I went past this I think it was the only redwood tree. I used to stop by, you know, maybe talk to it if no one was around. This one day, I passed by, and the bark of the tree, it's very quite spongy, but a big, sizable portion had fallen onto the ground. So me being a carer, I picked it up and put it back. You know, not with glue or anything, but I just kind of put it in there. Yeah, there's your bark back, you know. And this is how far away we get from the purity of our own spirit in many ways as we grow up. Sometimes we're taken away from it. And I wasn't happy living in this place. So, but the trees were always my resource for companionship. And so I put it back, and I was walking away, and a cone fell on my head. My response was, bloody hell, I'm never going to do anything again for anybody, because it hit me on the head hard. So I went and told a friend of mine, Indian friend, and he said, Cathi, do you not realise? He said, the tree was thanking you. And as soon as he said it, I was like, I melted inside. I thought, oh my God, how could I have interpreted it as it's trying to hit me, but it was thanking me. And I felt a bit ashamed. I thought, how did I miss that? And of course it was speaking to me. The tree is like the mother, and the mother just keeps on giving and giving and giving, and people keep on taking and taking and taking. And it's like, when do human beings wake up and realize you can't keep taking from the same source? You have to put something back at some point. You have to put something back.
Yeah.
And so that was a lovely experience when I realized. And I went back to it and spoke to it.
Well, yes, that is a wonderful story to end our conversation. Cathi, thank you so much for the wisdom that you shared, and the kind of the arc of these stories is just really magical, connecting all back to the Christmas tree. I love that. I love that.
It's lights on.
Yeah, so thank you again for joining today, and thank you to all of you who have joined us for this conversation. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, about our trees and about our magical spaces in nature. All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth podcast. Comment below, share, and most of all, please hit the subscribe button so that you'll hear when we publish another inspiring episode. You can visit us at luminous-spaces.com for more information on our online courses, retreats, and offerings. Thank you and have a magical day.